Yeah, starting back again. Yeah, the internet stopped working, so we're doing cut to. Hopefully they can find us. So going back to this, right? It starts with don't go to another person's field because it's protection. We don't know. We don't know how they will treat Ruth. But not only that, what does Boaz offer? You can what? You can glean here, right? You can glean here. It's not only don't go to another person's field, but you can glean here, right? Not only that, Boaz actually offers something that's extraordinary for gleaners, which is go after the harvesters. You get to follow these women. That's even further protection and provision, right? Ruth can finally provide for her mother-in-law. Now,
and the servants won't touch him.
Yeah, I want to go there. Verse 9. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the women. So there's protection there, right? Going with the workers who are working already. Not only that, look at what it says. Have I not told the men to not touch you? Now, the modern theologians, what they do is they like to put, right, the modern Me Too movement back into Ruth. That's called eisegesis. That's putting our story, our lives back into the text. It's kind of like putting modern ideas into this. But so far in the book of Ruth, what do we know about Boaz and Boaz's workers? Do we?
Do their job.
What is it?
They just do their job.
They just do their job. Do we have any evidence that Boaz's workers are perverted or nasty in any way? No, not at all.
They follow his orders.
They follow his orders, right? In fact, they're godly people too, right? Lord bless you, right? They greet each other in the Lord.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So what it shows here, it was an extraordinary provision. It was an extraordinary provision to allow a gleaner to go after the harvester during the harvest season. See, on a normal day, if there's someone who's following the harvesters, what would the workers do?
Shoo them away. Probably.
Yeah, they would stop that person, right? That's why Boaz is saying, have I not told the men not to touch you? He's actually making sure that others hear his provision to Ruth. It's not because the men are nasty or harassers, but it's that the man would be doing their job in protecting the harvesters.
And let her do what she's supposed to do.
Yeah, but now Boaz is saying, this is an extraordinary dispensation. I'm going to let you go after the harvesters. In fact, I'm going to let you harvest, really, basically. That's why Boaz has to say the warning, right? Not because they were bad people, but because it was an extraordinarily compassionate permission, right? It was an extraordinarily compassionate act for Boaz to provide for Ruth that way.
And she also gets to drink water.
And she also gets to drink water, right? What does this tell us about Boaz's character?
He's very kind.
Yeah, he's very kind. Does he have to do this?
No.
Would Boaz be breaking the law to tell Ruth to go back home?
Well,
No, this is not gleaning time, right? But the fact that Boaz provides even this much shows what characteristic of God? Well, what's the characteristic of God that's shown here?
Kindness?
Yeah, loving kindness. First, we got to see it in Ruth. Now we get to see it in Boaz. Now, the question on everyone's mind is what? What's the question? After hearing Boaz's permission here, Boaz's generosity. What's our question?
What's she gonna do?
Not what's she gonna do. What do you think?
Why?
Exactly. Why? And in fact, that's what Ruth asks. Why have I found such a favor in your eyes that you notice me? I'm a foreigner. She's not even an Israelite. What does Boaz say the reason is?
Oh, because what she did for her mother-in-law
Right. Right? How did Boaz hear this?
from one of his servants.
Not one of the
From the
servants.
town or something that
From
other
the
people-
town. Look at verse 4. Just then Boaz arrived from where? Bethlehem. What happened in Bethlehem just now?
Oh, they came. Naomi came in.
Exactly. Naomi came into town and the whole city was stirred, right? Is this Naomi? Is this Naomi? And Boaz was there.
Yeah.
Right? What a crazy coincidence, right? Did it just happen that way?
No, God had it
Right.
that way.
Right. But look at this. The reason why Boaz is so loving and kind to this foreign woman whom he just met is not love at first sight. He is touched by what Ruth has done for Naomi. Right? Since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with the people you did not know, just as Ruth provided or attempted to provide for Naomi, Boaz is going to do the same for Ruth and Naomi. What does this tell us about loving kindness?
It's from God.
It's from God. What else? It shows that loving kindness spreads.
Contagious.
It is contagious. Loving kindness is contagious. It spreads. It influences others to be loving and kind, just like the Lord.
Yeah.
That's what it shows. And Boaz, right, like a good godly man, wishes Ruth that God would reward her, right, for her faithfulness, her loving kindness, right? Because in Israel, whose provision is it ultimately?
God's.
God's, right? Boaz is saying, you have come under God's provision and protection, right?
Under whose wing?
Yeah.
God's wings.
Did we do 13 yet?
Yeah, 13 was the last one.
Okay. So may I continue to find favor in your eyes, my Lord. So Ruth said that, right? And the fact that Ruth is not one of the workers is astounding that she can do this. Boaz is treating Ruth just like he's one of the workers, but even better because she gets to keep her food. Now, who can read verses 14
16?
through 16?
I will.
Go ahead.
At mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come here, and that you may eat of the bread and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar." So she sat beside the reapers, and he served her roasted grain, and she ate and was satisfied and had some left. When she rose to glean, Boaz commanded his servants, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not insult her. Also, you shall purposely pull out for her some grain from the bundles, and leave it that she may glean, and do not rebuke her."
All right. This is even more astounding here. What does Boaz do?
Feeds her.
It's lunchtime. Do you think the Ruth the Moabitess had food to spare? No,
Oh,
she has no food.
yeah.
So what does Boaz do?
Gives her some.
Yeah, have my lunch. Have some.
Yeah.
And in the Middle Eastern culture, sharing food was a very, very personal thing, right? Again, this is not about romance. This is about Boaz willingly opening up so that Ruth could be provided for.
Dipping
He-
bread in vinegar.
Yeah, so like we do that too, right? Balsamic vinegar and olive oil.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't think they had olive oil though.
Oh, they did. They
but
do.
It doesn't say they used it.
No, it doesn't. But it's like a sauce, right, to make it tastier. Yeah. Now, look at further. In the end, does Ruth ever? Is it just gleaning that Ruth does?
No.
No. Look. So what would happen is, I mean, we don't farm, so it's a hard concept. What would happen is the reapers go by. They reap, right? Gather the stalks, tie them up, right? And then the harvesters come by to pick them up, the harvest, right? What Boaz is ordering is quite crazy. Let her gather among the sheaves. Let her gather among the sheaves that have been ready to be harvested. This is not gleaning, is it? It's harvesting. Boaz is letting Ruth harvest. But not only that, what else does he order?
And don't insult her.
Don't insult her, right? Why would people insult her or stop her?
You say, why are you doing that?
Exactly, because
That's not right.
that's not right. It's not normal. In any other circumstance, you do that, it's robbery. You're stealing, not for Ruth, because Boaz has given her the workers the command. Let her do that. What else? What more?
Pull some of the grain from the bundles.
Yeah, right. You both said it, right? Drop them. Gleaning is things that are dropped on accident. Not here. What Boaz is doing, pick them out of the already tied up sheaves so that Ruth can pick them up. At this point, is this gleaning? It's harvesting.
Yeah.
That's loving kindness. Does this cost Boaz his business?
No.
Well, he's wealthy, but it's a sacrifice still, right? And he's not going to go bankrupt, no,
He
right?
can afford it.
But he's not doing it because he can afford it, right? But he's doing it because that's what loving kindness is. Loving kindness is taking care and being concerned with the other person's need. The Ruth the Moabitess and Naomi the widow had greater needs, and he was considerate of their needs, even if it cost him. What's the modern trend towards when it costs something? What's the modern response when you have to do something right, but then it's costly?
Try to go cheaper.
Yeah, try to go cheaper or not do it, right?
Yeah.
Like when you go through some problem or trouble, there will be a lot of people who say, yeah, let us know how we can help, right? Or we're here for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those words are very encouraging for sure. But when you really need something, out of that crowd who might wish that, most will drop out. Something else will come up. Not for Boaz.
Yeah.
Boaz is willing to take initiative, just as Ruth took initiative to show loving kindness to the one who did show loving kindness. Now, who can read?
This one's 17 through 23.
Yeah, who can read through the end? Is it?
It's your turn.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your turn.
Okay, I'll read it. I'm reading from the NIV. So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she threshed the barley she had gathered, and it amounted to about an ephah. She carried it back to town, and her mother-in-law saw how much she had gathered. Ruth also brought out and gave her what she had left over after she had eaten enough. Her mother-in-law asked her, "Where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." Then Ruth told her mother-in-law about the one at whose place she has been working. "The name of the man I worked with today is Boaz," she said. "The Lord bless him," Naomi said to her daughter-in-law. "He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead." She added that man is close relative. He is one of our guardian redeemers. The Ruth the Moabite said, he even said to me, "Stay with my worker until they finish harvesting all my grain." Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It will be good for you, my daughter, to go with the women who work for him, because in someone else's field you might be harmed." So Ruth stayed close to the women of Boaz to glean until the barley and the wheat harvest were finished. And she lived with her mother-in-law. Now, just for those of you who just joined, the question, you can ask the questions on the chat. The first part got cut off because of poor internet connection. So you could rewatch it. But what's happening here is Ruth fully experienced Boaz's loving kindness, right? Going above and beyond, even though you don't have to, right? Boaz did not have to provide all this for Ruth, right? Gleaning was picking up things left over. Boaz was going far to even taking things that are his and dropping them on the ground so that Ruth can pick them up. Now, it says in verse 17, how much barley did she gather? It says an ephah. Does anyone know what that means?
No, I was going to ask you.
Yeah, an ephah is about 30 to 50 pounds. How much is that? 30 to 50 pounds of barley.
Half a pound.
No, it's 30 to, it's like a whole sack,
Yeah.
right?
What does Micah weigh?
Micah weighs almost around that. It's heavy. 30 to 50 pounds is not gleaning.
He's an ephah.
Ephah is an ephah of barley is not gleaning. That's what we call harvest. They could live off of that for weeks, right? I don't know. Do you guys eat rice or anything? Do you have like a bag of something, right? Imagine 30 pounds of rice. It's a huge sack. And Boaz, that's Boaz's provision, because who is he inspired by? God, and also Ruth. The fact that Ruth provided, right? Ruth provided for her mother-in-law. Now, I think this is really cool. The mother-in-law is surprised because why is she shocked?
As negative as she was being, she probably didn't think that
Oh,
she
yeah.
was going to have any success.
Exactly, right? A foreign woman who just got here thinks that she's going to go gleaning during the barley harvest. Gleaning does not happen during harvest season. And furthermore, it's the beginning of it. She would have had to wait 2 or 3 weeks, but not so here. So Naomi's all excited now. This is the first time you see Naomi in a positive mood. Blessed is the man who took notice of you. And Ruth, I think this is really cool. Ruth slowly reveals who this is, right? The name of the man I worked with today, right? Instead of, I worked for Boaz, or Boaz is the man. No, the name of the man I worked for today is Boaz, right? It's just that tension, that anticipation builds up. And then what more does Ruth find out about Boaz? What does Naomi tell about Boaz?
He be a guy for the Lord.
That's right. He is a kinsman redeemer. We're going to get to what kinsman redeemer is next week. But in the Old Testament, some relatives, closer you are, more likely, but a relative could buy your land, right, to redeem you because you have been struck with famine or bankruptcy, so that you don't lose that land from the family, right? Because how important was the land in the Old Testament?
Very.
Very important. It was the sign of the covenant, right? So the kinsman redeemer, instead of losing land to selling it to some foreigner or another tribe, the kinsman redeemer of the same tribe family would buy the land to redeem you from selling yourselves into slavery or losing the land. And what Ruth finds out is Boaz is not just a random stranger who helped out of generosity of his heart. He happens to be a relative of theirs. And Ruth did not know it, a close relative. Now, did it just happen to be that the case?
No.
No, right? It's never chance in the Bible. And what's amazing is Naomi's view of God suddenly changes. What's Naomi's view of God here?
She wasn't too good on this. She thought she was bitter and stuff.
Yeah, she was bitter. She said, the Lord, right, has returned me empty, right? But now Naomi can clearly see how the Lord actually has been providing for them from the beginning, right? The Lord bless him. He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead. Chapter 1, Naomi felt bitter and felt abandoned, right? The Lord's hand was against me, Naomi said. Not here. Here, the Lord has never actually left us. That man is our close relative. And then Ruth actually tells Naomi, is this just a one-day thing, one-day harvest? No. What more? What more is Ruth able to do? Ruth gets to do this the whole barley season. Just the barley season?
Until they have finished all of the harvest.
Barley and wheat season. 2 different seasons of harvest. Ruth was provided for by Boaz. So Ruth stayed close to the women, protection, right, of Boaz, to glean barley and wheat. And she lived with her mother-in-law. Here what it shows is through the loving kindness act of, who was the first one who showed loving kindness in this book? Ruth, right? Through the loving kindness of Ruth, the foreigner, that she showed to an Israelite widow, Boaz was influenced by that to show loving kindness to not only Ruth, but to that Israelite widow as well. This whole chapter 2, is about what loving kindness is. Loving kindness is doing the difficult thing to initiate so that the other person is taken care of no matter the cost. Did Ruth take in cost to serve Naomi?
No.
Wouldn't you say so in chapter 1? What was the cost for Ruth? What did she leave behind?
She left her whole.
She left behind everything, her whole life. And then Boaz also leaves behind, quite literally, the harvest, right? Not the whole harvest, but quite a handful. I mean, 30 pounds of barley, and that's only one day. Can you imagine what more Ruth had gotten?
Yeah.
Right? So that's the point of loving kindness. Yes, ironically, it is a foreign woman who shows loving kindness, which is God's character to God's people. But God's people, they catch on to show the loving kindness to others themselves. And that's something that's very important in the church. When we show loving kindness, it has to be other-centered, what the other person needs, even if it costs. Loving kindness is not forced. No one forced Boaz, no one forced Ruth. Socialism is forced. Communism is forced, but not so loving kindness. So we do not tie the book of Ruth to socialism or communism, right? Boaz was not forced at gunpoint. They did it out of the kindness of their heart to reflect their creator, God, the Lord. Any questions or comments before we end here? All right.
Didn't Naomi show kindness too? Because it's kindness to Ruth to let her go with her when she just said, I'm just
Yeah.
so she kind of let her.
I don't know if that's kindness or maybe Naomi didn't have a choice. Ruth was pretty, stubborn about going with.
She could have said no.
Now we will see Naomi's loving kindness next chapter. So let's not jump there, right? All right. So I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you for joining, live streamers. All right.